Hi everyone, my name is Jeremy, and on this channel I talk about color and light, and today I want to do my longest video yet, and this one is an uncut version of a repaint. I posted something in the community section of this channel to see if people would be interested in me doing a recolor, looking at their artwork, doing a little bit of research and extraction from different pieces of artwork and applying new color to a piece. And I got over 100 different submissions from different people, and it was just so much beautiful artwork. I wish I could do them all. I can't do them all. So I have picked one that I thought was particularly perfect for this setup. It has a really nice composition, has great character, and I thought that there was a lot of potential for the lighting. So this is from an artist called Nimali, and just beautiful, beautiful artwork. This particular video is going to be a long one. So for a few of you, you've asked me to show the entire process. Like when I did the egg painting, people appreciated that I didn't speed it up. So this one is a bigger illustration, more than just an egg, and there's a lot of imagination that comes into this. So this one's a long one. If you want to stick through the whole thing, thank you to the 3 of you who will watch the whole thing, and I hope it's really useful. For the rest of you, I'm going to make a shortened down version as well, just in case you don't want to sit for 2 hours and watch this. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Let's dive in. Here's the image that she submitted, and it's just lovely. I looked at this, and the first thing that I did was start thinking, how could I enhance this? If I were painting this image, what would I do with this? So I started with making some line art, and I can hide the original just so that I have something clean to work with that gives me a guide, and I can have this on its own layer, paint underneath it. So this is a great way to start. And then I started doing research. So I looked at water images. I wanted to see, what does it look like underwater looking at the sky, and what does it look like when you're half underwater, like one of those cameras that has a dome in front of the lens so you can be half underwater and half over water. I think that that would work really well in this, and these are some of the top picks that I found. I really like the beams of light and that glow that happens in this image, and some of those little God rays that could come down. I like seeing the way light reflects under the surface and the line of the edge of, this illustration, and I might put that into this. So I'm trying to extract from a large number of images, and this is very much a professional workflow for concept artists, to go find a bunch of reference of a lot of different things and be able to pull pieces from each of them. All of these different images have little things that I learned, like the bubbles under the water here, and the way the water's edge works along here, and maybe some of the colors. Is it going to be seeing clouds up above and water underneath? And just kind of like trying to learn from each of these and extract the most inspiring parts of each. So after I did a search for underwater, looking at the sky, and then half underwater, half in the sky, I decided to look at sunset underwater, and did a search for that. And I found these images, and this started to inspire me a little bit more into the colors themselves. So I like this image on the top here with, do I want to do the sky a little bit more sunset and change the way the color would work? I like the teals and the blues and the pinks and how they all kind of blend together. I also did an image search for snorkeling and underwater, and seeing the way that the water caustics, the light that comes through the surface, bends as the surface of the water kind of shifts, and what it would do onto the characters underneath the water. I really liked some of the colors, this teal and green effect, going together, and the balancing of colors. So I'm kind of searching all over the place and finding one image that would inspire another image that would inspire another image. I also started looking for like a dress underwater. What does cloth, how does the cloth kind of flow under the water, sunset underwater? And from there, I was like, all right, the next thing I want to research is, what do fish kind of look like, especially fish that have a nice subsurface quality to them, that light, when it hits through them, diffuses on the inside of the fish, and how it kind of glows around. I even looked for images of glowing fish, and I found a lot of references that I think are interesting. As I study, one of the things that I realize is that fish, or anything that lives underwater, you won't see reflections under the water on the fish very much at all. It's only when they come out into the air that you can actually see some reflection on the surface. So maybe some of the fish that are on top have a reflectiveness, and the ones that are underwater don't. I can also study and look at the color themselves of the way, they're goldfish in the original painting. And so I want to make sure that it retains the same texture and materials, but has just kind of the lighting. What does it look like when it's leaping out of the water? Would I add little flecks and, of water droplets, and this is what they look like? So these are great reference here, which then inspired me to look up iridescent objects, seeing things like a mermaid tail and how would fish scales work, iridescent fish scales and iridescent bugs. What if the mermaid themselves had an iridescent quality, and what does that look like? How does the color wrap around surfaces so that I could then paint it into my image? And I like the way these colors, the greens and the oranges, kind of mixing together in this coppery type feel. I liked, there was a lot of images of, when I said iridescent scales, of snakes, and there's just such beautiful color, the way this diffraction works over the surface and the way the light bends to make all of these different colors. So this is another bit of my research. And then lastly, I just looked up images that have inspiring lighting to me. And these are ones that have kind of like a horizon and a little bit of a glow and a bloom that happens over top of the lens. But it's a very kind of cohesive image that the whole thing kind of balances together. I also really like these clouds. I think one of the things that I want to do in this repaint is to focus in on subsurface. So the clouds can be kind of soft and let light come through them and diffuse through them, and the fish are soft and let light diffuse through them, and the dress kind of lets light flow through it. So that's my goal. That's what I want to attempt. In all of these images, I kind of like, that aspect of it. This last one on the bottom here, the clouds, again, you can see the light bouncing through the clouds and then scattering from within, and it just makes it feel vibrant and alive, and not very, not like it's a solid object made out of plastic. It's made out of a soft material. And then I just like the kind of some of the colors in this image here, this girl with the car, and like, do I want to go sunset? How far do I go? So these are all my references, and now I can zoom back out, and I've taken these and I've put them into another document that I'm going to have right on the side. I just kind of copied them over so that I can have them separately and then pull them up while I'm painting in this image. So I'm painting in Photoshop, and here's my original again, here's my line art, and I have just a layer underneath. So it's time to paint. Let's see where it goes. I did not do any pre-planning other than finding the research. I didn't figure I could do that on camera, and doing the line art, and I didn't need to do that on camera. But this process, I think, is what people are interested in. Like, how would I go about this now? So I'm going to pick my favorite brush for doing things like this. This is my chalky brush, and if you're interested in the brush, my Photoshop settings video has it in the description if you want to download this brush. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with just a couple big colors and a couple big gradients of the whole thing. So in Photoshop, I can command backspace or option backspace here to fill with my foreground color, and at least it gets me something that's not white. I don't ever like starting with a white canvas. I always want to start with something that's kind of in the mid tones in something. I know there's going to be a lot of blue in this, and I'm going to have to make some big choices here really quickly. So what if for my sky I kind of go something like this reference image here on the right, and I don't know, I just gotta play and see what comes out. So I'm gonna lean this a little bit more blue, pink, purple, something like this, and just start blobbing it in. One of the things that in the original painting that I really liked was the idea that there was this sun. There's this beautiful sweep through the whole image, and I want to retain that, of light coming from this kind of top spot. So even if it is kind of sunset, I want to retain this. Or maybe I'll just play with a couple of things and just see what I think. I'm going to come over to this image again and look at my water reference. Some of these colors that I liked. I'm going to turn that one on to use as reference now. Going to hold my option key to pick that color and make a darker, bluer version of this to just kind of paint some darker colors here. I'm staying really loose at first and kind of blurring my eyes of the whole thing. Now I'm going to go back to the sky. I try to stay about the whole image at all times. Oh, let's see. Will this work? This kind of pinkish color way up here? I'm not sure. Let's pull this around more towards this orangey color and see if this starts looking nice. Oh, one other trick that I like to do that you can do in Photoshop. I'm not sure about other painting software. By the way, I will be using other painting software in future paintings. I do have Procreate, I have Affinity Photo, I have Clip Studio Paint, and Krita. Krita's free, which is awesome. So in future videos, I'm going to show painting in each of those so that you can see that this is not about the software. I'm really just most familiar with Photoshop because I've been using it so long and it's kind of the industry standard. So if you're going to be going for a job, it's best to learn Photoshop, but I realize that Photoshop is expensive at the same time. So, you know, using free software or cheaper software is great. So I'm going to go up to Window, Arrange, New Window 4, the same thing. So it's going to make a duplicate copy of this document, and then I'm going to go to my zoom tool and zoom out. So what this will do for me is this can stay kind of right up here. There also is a, there's a tool in Photoshop to see a small little thumbnail as well, but I kind of like being able to control the size of this. So I can look at this one image and see, you know, if I want to paint really big or if I want to paint really small to make sure that my overall composition is working nicely. So I can paint over here in this one, which is really nice. And like, what if I have more of a brighter teal type color along the edge of the water? Make this brush a little smaller. Like this is my edge where the water will be. And it updates in both paintings, which is really cool. So I can come back and I can paint right here or over there and try to get like these, the God ray thing that I wanted into the water kind of coming through. Is that working as general colors? And then let's say there's kind of these purples on the horizon, purple pinks way on the horizon here. This is a very vulnerable part of a painting because it's experimental and I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to get. But and doing this live on camera is always kind of scary. I think a lot of you that had sent me images had said, I'm not sure that I'm ready to show my artwork. And it's true. All of us as artists, it's a common thing that we just never feel confident in our work. I never know when I'm posting videos too. Are they going to like this one or are they going to hate this one? I've got imposter syndrome for sure. And like, is this going to be the one where everyone goes, your videos before were okay, but this one, you ruined it on this one. And I always feel that. I don't know. Does this work? I'm going to duplicate this, make a copy of this layer so that I can try something new too. Like the sunset colors, it may or may not be working. So I'm going to just make a duplicate of it and try something different. So I think I will try a bluer sky. Try this where it's a little bit more middle of the day and less sunset, just to see the differences. This is the advantage of not worrying about details. Just leave those details in the line drawing for now, and then try to look at the whole image and see if we can come up with a couple of ideas as quickly as possible. So what if we were to say the sky has kind of stormier kind of clouds that are wrapping around here? Like if I go back to my reference and look at my cloud images, like this. What if I try something kind of like this type of sky? Extract from this sky and say there's kind of these dark clouds coming around, like coming up out of the sea, but then there's this hole in the clouds where light is shining down and it can shine onto our characters and really pop them off the background. So maybe I'll make these clouds even darker along here so that the characters can really stand out. And again, I'm looking at overall composition of everything before I really do too much. Now let me paint. Let's try this. What do we think? Is this working? I'm going to try another trick. I'm going to make another layer, and that layer I'm going to, instead of it being in normal mode down here, I'm going to switch this and put it in linear dodge, which is add mode. What this is going to do is it's going to take anything that is dark and is going to be transparent, and anything that is bright is going to add on top of this. So like if I paint with something black, you're not going to see anything at all. But if I paint with something like a bright orange, you're going to see it kind of glow through, and it's going to add. It's not going to paint opaque orange on top of everything. It's just going to add on top of this the brightness. I'm going to switch my brush to just something really big and soft and take its opacity down a little bit and make my brush bigger, and now kind of paint in some more. Maybe the opacity needs to be a little bit more. Okay, so that makes this like a glowy clouds. Maybe this is too bright. I just don't know. This process again. Playing, pushing, pulling. Let's see what it looks like. Let's try that on this background. Maybe some combination of all of these. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and merge these layers together and keep going. Let me get some of the characters in there to see if I can get some of those colors in there. So I'm going to look and switch back to my textured brush. And now I'm going to paint just some general colors. I'm imagining, just say that she's wearing in the original, she's wearing a yellow dress. So in this light, a yellow dress might actually be, I'm going to use a technique that I normally like doing, and that's adding the darker tone. Yeah, no, it's not yellow yet, but I'm going to paint in orange as my base. Same with her skin and her hair, and just get something in that will make her form stand out. And then we'll add more light over top and we'll correct these. I'm not worrying about painting every line. If I do, it's going to take forever to paint this whole thing. I just want to get my composition as strong as I can and some of those lights. Okay, and maybe these fish, I'll kind of do the same with them. I'm painting all on one layer right now too. You can paint in multiple layers, but for now I'm just kind of blocking in, and then I can decide if I want to split layers. So, as reference of this kind of like backlit, the characters will be darker in front of the background. Wondering whether I'll speed up this whole process in post. Okay, so the fish that are underwater are not going to be as brightly colored because they're underwater and there's less direct sunlight that's hitting them. They're going to kind of like silhouette into the background. And all of the light will be affected by the blue under the water. You know, at this stage in a painting, you can start to give up hope and be like, this looks so bad. But I've realized enough that this is kind of normal. Okay, going back to my reference, and I'm going to look at my underwater. So studying again from reality, what does the edge of the water do? There's kind of like a dark line and little bits of light lines and some bubbles. So I just want to get the essence of this. And come back to this painting. I think a little bit of like water surface that's on top would be nice. And then there's stuff that's underneath. Is this working? I just don't know. I don't like the sky. So I'm going to paint a little bit of brighter light here. This, where the light is hitting directly, I'm going to let the more yellowy color kind of shine through. And I'm going to paint kind of lightly. I'm liking what's happening under the water, but I'm not liking what's happening above the water, especially with the sky. So the sky here has some kind of just brighter colors. I think I'm going to go away from the sunset and go for a nicer, bluer sky. So come back here. I'm going to start over with the sky. If I had done this in layers, maybe this would work better. So one thing I think is interesting with studying skies is that the darkest part of the sky is at the top. But this illustration was done like it's a hole in clouds. So usually there's more light at the horizon than there is. Like if you look straight up at the sky, you'll see the darkest part of the blue that leads to space. And if you look out at the horizon, you're seeing more air that's picking up light. So I'm trying an experiment with having more brighter color at the horizon to just see if this adds a level of brightness. Now let's try these cloudy shapes again, just to see if I get something interesting. I like the spiral of this. I'm leaning back and squinting my eyes a lot and looking at this little image here and like, this is not really working for me yet. So I'm going to try something along the lines of these type of clouds. Let's see if we can get something like that. It's big, poofy clouds, stormy clouds. I think at this point in an illustration, you have to decide, where's the light coming from? Is the light coming from up on top? I think for this, it's best if the light comes from on top. I'm putting some of these blues just into the whole thing to try to balance. Again, I'm looking at the whole composition. And those oranges were just too strong. I need there to be more blue light. If it's going to be more overcast, there should be more blue influence. So I'm not going to worry about the yellows or local colors really at all first. I'm trying to look at the whole thing. And now I'm going to try leaning this a little bit more towards this cyan color to see. Look at this image here. Look at the way the clouds, there's parts of the clouds that are have this cool color, and then there's this subsurface thing that's happening. When the sunlight hits it, it goes warm, and then that warmth fades off through it. Can I get that type of effect into my image? And where would the sunlight be coming from? So maybe the sunlight is off screen over here. And I'm going to go ahead and try. What if there's like light coming through the clouds? And slowly as it comes, it leans more. That's just looking muddy. I think my problem is that I'm not really committing to any one thing yet. And it's making it feel inconclusive as to what I'm doing. I need some of that brighter light. So I'm just going to go ahead and put some of this warmer. Let's say sunlight is hitting up here at the top. Okay, I'm starting to see this. I'm liking the, still seeing some cool of the sky, and there's some interesting colors. There's purples and blues and some interesting stuff that's happening up there. I'm liking this. It feels like the clouds at the top are, let's add some actual sunlight hitting these to give the idea of poofy clouds. A little bit of light. It's going to justify the way that the light beams are going to come down, and let's just go ahead and scribble some in to say it's going to hit her on her face. It's a beautifully backlit type of image, and that way the light can kind of like bloom out and shine onto her head. Notice how scribbly I'm staying with this right from the start. I think it's key to not get lost in those details. So I'll just kind of scribble in some stuff and see if it starts to feel right. Blur my eyes. I'm looking at this image here. Is this starting to feel interesting? I like the idea of there being little pockets in the clouds that let through some of the sky. The original painting had some really interesting swirls and sweeps of color. I'm going to try to get some of that into this one. Areas of dark in these clouds where they can be more deep, saturated. Make my brush bigger again. And then areas of light that kind of show through, like it's this big area of storm clouds that's kind of working through this environment. Okay. So this character down here needs some sort of rim light, and then there'll be bounce light. What I'm thinking is the light will bounce off of her dress and onto her face, so she can get a kind of a warmer bounce from the right. So she's going to also have this really hot rim light hitting her hair. Not worrying too much about local colors yet. And I'm not worrying about the color of her hair. I'm just trying to see if this lighting works. Yeah, I'm starting to feel something here. There's something in this. Okay, now I want to think my next steps here. I might blend some of these things together. So I'm going to switch to my mixer brush, which is a nice blender, and just kind of soften some of these gradients to just see. And I'm trying to think about the whole image. So I definitely am feeling like I want to see light that's coming through the water. There'll be kind of silhouetted in here of where the bodies of these characters are. And then there's some definite shafts of light. I'll come back to my reference, look at my I like these type of colors. This bright color here is really nice. Same with this type of idea of brighter lights. So let's come back to this and select that color again. Go ahead and make it really, really cyan here. Under the water, I'm going to use this to help pop out the characters from the background, like lights that are shining under the surface. Those kind of beams of light. This is also going to let the fish stand out from the background a little bit, so they can be darker in the foreground. So the influence of the water, under the water, I don't really see yellow of the dress. I could select that color and just kind of lean it a little bit, and it'll give just a hint of yellow dress under there, but I don't want to make it actually yellow. I want to think about the light through the water and then how does that affect. So just leaning it a little bit green makes it feel like it's kind of yellow under the water. Okay, now I want to think about the backlit fish. So noticing what fish look like when they have sunlight behind them. Whole composition. Always working on the entire composition. I don't want to work on one side and work my way through to the other. I want to always be looking at the whole image as a piece. And right now the fish are definitely not working. The ones underwater I'm kind of okay with. That's a good starting point. But the ones up in the air, they need some love. And the focal point of this whole thing is this bright fish. So I'm going to say they're goldfish and they're backlit. So why don't I start with making this. I'm going to try an experiment here of just making a deep red. So I'm following color temperature, and the idea of the darkest parts, light will saturate and it'll shift its hue, saturation, and value. So even though it's a goldfish, if I look at my references of fish, the goldfish actually has deep reds and the reds go to oranges, oranges go to yellow through it, and that range of colors through the spectrum will make it feel like it is an orange fish, but when light reflects through it, you get this whole range of colors through that. Any of these images really show color temperature and this kind of subsurface light that is coming through and diffusing through the surface. So I'm going to try to capture that in my paint by doing deep reds in the darkest points. And then I'll do orange and orange yellows in the where the light is kind of picking through this. So now this edge, I'm going to shift this towards an orange, make my brush a little smaller, and then the edges of the fish will pick up that kind of orange rim light as it goes through the fins of the fish. At least that's the theory. Trying to add the color in the right places so that it feels alive, that the essence of the way the light and kind of like it's glowing. Like there's light that's glowing through the clouds and there's light that's glowing through the fish. That's what I'm aiming for. I think subsurface is one of those things that really is beautiful in an image because it lets you subsurface lighting, subsurface scattering of light, lets there be little hints of really saturated bright colors. So this fish at the top is going to be hit with the most of the light. So I'm going to go a nice brighter, all the way to maybe even yellow here. Again, look at my whole image. Is this working? Okay, so now I'm thinking about the light overall. We've got light from the top. That's going to be lighting onto the character. And we've got light that will bounce off the surface of the water and back up onto these fish. So if I want to give good shaping and form to them, make them feel three-dimensional in this space, I need to think about there's going to be multiple light sources. There's the sunlight hitting it directly. There's the skylight that's hitting it indirectly, just kind of like softly filling it. And then there's bounce light from the cool of the water. So I'm going to experiment here and selecting this kind of color, and I'm going to desaturate to try to find what looks like it's still in the oranges, but it's desaturated of like what would cool tones. Am I getting that right? I think it needs to be brighter. Is this light that's kind of bouncing from the water? I'm going to lean it a little bit more. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. This process is always like a give it a try. See what happens. Maybe a little bit of a blue highlight because these fish are now out of the water. So they're catching a little bit of sky reflection on them. Oh, and I might as well go ahead and get some of these eyes in here. The original has the eyes being kind of white with a dark center, so I'm just going to experiment with this and see. This fish is kind of more in the foreground. When you're in a really foggy environment or underwater, one of the things that really helps tell you depth is levels of black. So if I look at what is the darkest thing, I'll be able to know that that's the closest to camera. So like being for size, maybe this guy needs to be a little bit darker because it's the closest thing to the camera, and that'll help give kind of layers of depth. And these ones can go maybe a little bit lighter just because they're a little bit farther back. And that'll help provide separation of layers. And her leg a little here. This other leg is a little bit farther back, so it's a little bit lighter. Again, let's look at this little thumbnail. Is it reading as an image? I'm getting closer. I'm never satisfied with my work. By the way, there's a quote that all of us use in the industry all the time, that an artist's work is never completed, only abandoned. And it is very true that we're always like, it's never quite good enough and it's never quite what we had in our head, but we attempt it anyway. So there is a moment where you just kind of have to give up and be like, well, that's the best I could do for now. And I'm having those feelings like, I wished it was more. I had more in my mind of what it could be. But we'll keep going, because sometimes it surprises you. You got to do something in order to see whether you can succeed or not. There's too much light over there. Okay, skin tones of a character. Now I'm going to start thinking about the local colors and how the light is interacting. I kind of blobbed it in at first, and it's not bad, but I need more. I need to start thinking now about skin tones. So it's going to go kind of muddy here. So I'm going to pull it a little bit more red into the shadows just to bring some life into this. Well, not that much. A little more orange, but I want it to feel like there's light coming through her skin as well. So she's not going gray, and I'm just painting in very lightly. And her hair as well. I want there to be some light that's kind of glowing through the hair. I'm going to turn off the line painting and see if this is getting closer. Interesting. The original has so much beautiful graphic shapes. Between the two characters, the mermaid is this like green color, and she has this nice rich skin tones. I like what's going on with the hands. I'm not sure. Is that supposed to be like henna on the hands? You know, that is a different color, and then little sparkles on top of it, magic that's coming out. There's definitely some magic that's happening around this fish, and we should capture some of that magic. So I think I need to, looking at the original, this character's hair here, the mermaid character has kind of purple hair, and I don't have any of that. So let's get in some of that now. I'm going to select this color and just kind of shift my tones here. My color relativity thing, if you've seen my video on color relativity, I don't have to go all the way to a purple color. I can just kind of lean the color a little bit once I've found some colors in here, make it darker, a little more saturated into the shadows. And it starts looking like it's, I mean, this really is kind of a pink purple, but it almost looks like this purple would be in this deeper purple zones, but because of the way it's been painted, it doesn't need to go all the way around the wheel to get that feeling of kind of purpley hair. And then the skin tones, I think I've made the mermaid a little too orange, but so I'm going to shift that back a little bit and try to find these tones again. It's kind of greenish color. Scribbles and blobs. That's how we stay fast with all of this. Work really quickly and blur my eyes and see if we can see this. I think for my version, I'm going to veer a little bit away from the greens. I want to try and experiment really quick. So I'm just going to make a new layer just as an experiment to say, what if it was actually more of kind of these a little bit more cool tones. Yeah, I'm kind of liking that. And let's go bluer in the shadowed parts. Scribbles, lots of scribbles. Again, look at my little thumbnail. Is this working? I can't see the shape of it. When I look at the thumbnail, it just goes completely flat. I do like the bluer tones better, but so I'm just going to go ahead and commit to this and merge these two layers together. In Photoshop, on a Mac, it's Command E and it merges them together. So now I just have one layer, and I'm going to go back to my mixer brush, which is kind of like a blender, and just blend these colors, just soften this out. No, I'm just trying to find the big tones, and then I can come back and add details and change some of the light. So there's going to be two parts of light on this character. It's backlit by sunlight. There's not a direct light source. Like this character, the main girl in a dress has sunlight directly onto her face, but the mermaid is only backlit. So I'm going to use soft bounce light. I'm going to have two light sources. One, a glow from water on the far right side. So I'm just going to try an experiment here of saying, well, there's light that's going to be kind of coming onto the underside on this side. Can you see it's very subtle? But I'm just kind of painting from one side. Maybe I'll add a little bit under that on this character too. And then there's going to be warm light bouncing off of this girl's dress, coming the other way. As I go along, I spot little things that I want to kind of update. I want to add some richness into the color of the dress. So it's a yellow dress, but I want there to be oranges in it as well. So as I see it, I'm like, I'm just going to make a little edit, little updates here and there. Okay, so now I'm going to take that same kind of color and say, this is light that's coming from, let me just do some paint overs really quick of this idea. So you've got sunlight coming in this way, and it's going to hit her face and then bounce off of her face and off of her dress and diffuse onto this character, onto this sides of the character. So that's what I'm going to paint right now, is that idea of bounce light, and that will provide the shaping, the wrapping of light around this character's face from that bounce light. So let's do it. So I'm going to pick this tone and make this a little bit warmer, a little bit brighter, and let's just see how this goes. Again, this side of the face, and it wraps around this side of the arms, and it kind of wraps around. So again, I'm thinking about its warm light onto, even though the skin tones are a little bit cooler. Did I run out of... Did it stop again? Stop. Okay, I might be running out of battery or running out of disk space on this card. I might have to stop here. Having to make this quite bright, actually, to be able to see the shape of the character. Again, lots of scribbles. This is starting to work for me. Her hair, I think, needs a little bit more glow to it. Putting in some more cools in here because she just feels kind of dead and gray. I know the original had it this soft green, but I'm trying my best in this stage to find the right colors. How bright should they be? Does it help the read of the characters? Can I understand it well? Adding a little bit more color complexity in the dress that it stands out. I feel like this skin needs some love as well. The base under the base under most human skin, no matter what color your skin is, has warmth and red from what's underneath. The subsurface of our skin is very warm from all of the muscles and tone and blood from underneath. So I want her hands to kind of glow in the light. So I'm going to add some really bright kind of orange around the fingers just to see if this makes it look like sunlight is shining through. Add that vibrance into it. It's definitely turning out to be a very saturated piece. But does it work? Again, look at my image. It's sort of working for me. I think looking at this, I need more of a bright rim onto this character's hair. A little bit on this fish to help pop it out. Okay, at this point in the process, I'm going to pause and step away for a little bit. I'm going to go get lunch, and then I'm going to come back and see whether I like where I went. Sometimes we get art blindness, so I'm going to pause there. I'll be back soon. All right, I'm back. I had a nice lunch. It was really good. And now I'm back to look at this image with fresh eyes after having some food and taking a break. And what do I think? I'm pretty happy with this so far. I think it's starting to have that separation of characters from the background and starting to see some of the components. I think what I want to do is experiment with the water surface. I want to get the skin tones right. I want to get a little bit more sunbeams shining down. So I think that's what I'm going to work on next, to see if I can kind of like get that last bit of the illustration. If you notice the way I'm painting this, I'm not worrying about any details. If I were to, if I hide the line level, the line layer, it's really scribbly. But this is really important to the way I work is, again, I don't want to get caught up in any details. The art of unseeing. I want to unsee eyes and ears and hairs and, fabric details. And I just want to go for the big composition because it's the only way that I can keep my brain in track of, is this a good illustration? Is it well laid out? So that's my philosophy for this, of how I work. So I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to put that layer again into linear dodge add mode, and I'm going to experiment. I'm going to switch back to my soft brush here to just see if I can get some beams of light that'll feel like sunlight that's breaking through the clouds right at this point. So I'm going to make a much bigger brush, take my opacity down by 50%, and I'm going to go kind of a warm orangey creamy color, and just to see if I can make this feel like there's a spot of sun, like the sun is right here shining through the cloud. I'm going to make this bigger, and I'm going to make it more orange, deeply saturated, because as the light would fall off, it'll just kind of give this slight glow, like a shaft of light that's shining down through the sky right onto our characters. It kind of lights everything up. So I'm going to turn on and off that layer so you can see what it's doing, and maybe it's a little bit strong at the top, so I'm going to paint in some darker. It's going to kind of tone this out just a little bit. But now it'll feel like, bing, sunlight. What do we think? Is that too strong? I'm going to try taking its opacity down a little bit just to see. Maybe something like that. What I like about this is it's making some fog right here, kind of in the middle zone, that kind of helps separate and draws my eye here. Now there's two kind of points in this composition. Well, the swirls that were in the original, like I can kind of like, my eye wants to go to highest contrast, to the fish first, and then to the girl, and then to the mermaid, and then it kind of loops to the outer fish. It's what I liked about the original artwork, is that the composition was just really strong. I think it's really strong. So now that I have that glow light, maybe on its own layer, maybe I'll come back in and add, I'm going to try another little layer here, just these experimental. I normally like working all in one layer just to keep things really simple, but with advanced illustration, I will use layers and merge and use some fancy tools. But for this channel, I'm trying to keep things as simple as possible so that you can see that the process it's not complicated. What I really want to get into is a flow so that I'm not lost in the tools. I want to get lost in the artwork and the beauty of it and not have to think about the tools. So anyhow, I'm going to go back to my paintbrush here. I'm going to just switch to a regular, just kind of hard-edged round tool for a little bit. And what I want is to see the surface of this water. I'm going to make this really bright kind of edge. Like this is where the water is getting hit by some of that bright sunlight. Maybe I make this water's edge kind of come, like we can see the top of the water right here. But this is our actual line. What do I think? Does that look more like a watery edge? I'm going to switch back to my textured brush just because I like leaving a little bit of artistic texture in this whole thing. Does this work? Feel like a watery kind of edge? Maybe over here I have it dipped down a little bit too. Notice from the references of water lines, there's often a brighter part and a darker part. Like right along this edge, there's some little bubbles and there's a dark edge, and then the underneath is really kind of foggy. So I'm trying to mimic that idea and just painting in some like that deeper edge where it's actually touching near the lens of the camera. So I can turn on and off that layer and see if this is adding much. I think it adds something. It makes it feel like there's clearly a water edge on the camera. I like it. So I'm going to merge those two layers back together just so I'm kind of committing to it. And I'm going to go ahead and merge these two as well. So I'm shift selecting them and then hitting on a Mac Command E, which pulls them all together. And now we have just one layer. Quick little save. Now I think the process is refining any of these colors. I think the base tones of it is pretty good, but now I'm thinking about, instead of big blobs of like the fill light, and then where's the light, the sun coming from, and now what are the color of the fish, and what is the subsurface, and now what is the bounce? You know, what's happening with each of these objects, and thinking in 3D space in my mind of, okay, what could make this better? I'm going to duplicate this layer just in case I mess something up. I can go back to it, but I'm going to go back to my mixer brush and soften out some of these details now. Make my brush a little smaller, but this is just to kind of soften some of these lines and see how light might wrap. And then I can get back into, do I need to make adjustments to where composition is going. Somebody asked on the channel, like, okay, your loose drawings are fine, but how do you go to the final details? And this is the process. Surprisingly enough, it can take way longer to do this last step of the process, this first part of making the big choices of where the light, what's the composition. Once this is set, now comes into the little details and smoothing each little bit out so that the light flows in the right way, and little touch-ups, and that's what can take the long amount of time with this type of work. So like if I want a really polished piece, that could be I wouldn't want to record all of this because it could go for a couple of hours or more. I'm trying to work as fast as I can to show you that illustrations don't need to take a week or a month. I mean, we've done this whole thing in, what is this video? I'm hoping to be an hour or less through this process, and it might not be a fully refined image, but pretty close. Close enough that it should give you an understanding of like how to do this process, and then you could go in and paint out all the fine details off of this. But hopefully it's an inspiring process to see what it could be for you. Again, I'm just kind of trying to blend some of these colors to make it a little easier on my eye to see it as a 3D form. I'm not putting in face details yet. I'm just seeing if these colors all seem to work together. Where do I need edits? I feel like something in the sky is not quite right. Maybe this line needs to be kind of blurred together here. Something with my clouds doesn't feel quite right yet. The transition between warm and cool is feeling a little bit muddy. So I'm going to have to think about how to get it to feel juicy again. And like nice big soft poofy clouds being rimlit by warm sunlight. When I paint with a lot of friends, we'll often get a Spotify playlist and play that in the background to help make time go by. One of the ideas that I have for my classes that I want to do, like if you sign up for the classes, I'll just talk about this while I'm painting and exploring, because my brain needs something to distract on. It's like two sides of my brain are working at, on different platforms. I got my GPU and my CPU processing differently. Anyhow, one of the ideas that I'm pondering for my business, if anybody is interested in classes beyond just what I'm offering on the YouTube channel, is to do color study sessions together, so that if people sign up for the more guided classes, that maybe once a week there will be an open Discord channel where people can join in and we actually paint together. And that's been a lot of fun to do with my friends. I think that would be a really cool thing to do as part of the class. So this process is always just starting big and working small. So once I have those colors found, I don't need to find them again. I know that they're going to work in the overall composition. So now it's just making my brush smaller, getting the lines and the details. Like at some point soon I might end the process of me just doing this in real time. I'll keep recording and then speed this up so you can see the rest of the process, but it's just smoothing out lines, putting in little details. Like I think these fish eyes need some little highlights on them. They'll start feeling more wet. Maybe I'll put some sort of, what color eyes should these have? Maybe a green teal eye. Let's give them little juicy eyes here. Okay, I think, let me turn back on my line art just to see. I'm gonna start doing the characters' faces. Just some details of the face. I need to see eyes in here to see how well this is gonna turn out. No, this character definitely needs deeper blue type of eyes to feel watery. Like a water creature. Teeth. Let's make that earring a different color. So around the bows or any of this dark occlusion, which is the dark parts of this, I'm saturating so that I can put in my details and it'll feel more fabric-y, a little bit of that soft fabric if there's more color. Okay, this process making sense? One more little trick I'm going to do. I'm going to do another glow mode. So making another ad to just make some magic-y stuff around the fish. Let's do this in a red type color. Magic sparkles. Also going to add a little bit of glow to the top edge of the water here. One trick for making things feel bright is to have bloom. So it's where the camera just can't handle that amount of light. So if I put just a little bit of bloom right here at this edge, it'll just make it feel like sunlight. That it's clipping. It's too bright. It kind of makes the water surface feel really hot. Maybe a little bit less orange. I'm going to undo a little bit and make this a little less saturated, but like a little highlight that's just kind of hitting the edge of the water and glowing. I can also use this technique for kind of sculpting some light. So if I want more bounce light on our mermaid character, I can make this just kind of softly feel like light that's coming from the dress. So I'm just painting in, because it's an add mode, it's just kind of making glow. And if I look in my small view, I can see the shapes in it. It kind of enhances it just a little. I'm going to add a little bit of glow under the water too. Okay, I'm pleased with this so far. This is turning out okay. Adding a little bit of bloom onto the fish and a little bit of extra rim lights. This glow trick is such a powerful tool. Doing a little under her chin so it looks like light that's bouncing up from her dress onto her skin, and just makes it feel vibrant and alive. Okay. Again, here it is with and without, so you can kind of see the effects of that extra bloom. I'm going to merge these back together. You can see my updates here. Go back to some mixer brush. Oh, this blue. What do I do with the blue over here? I'm going to make another glow layer and see if I can add some green glow underneath that'll feel believable, maybe? Does that help or not? I don't know. I'm adding some warmth into these clouds. Again, the soft glow that'll just kind of like wrap that light down, feel like the sunlight is a little bit more glowing through the cloud. Just that little bit of warmth, I think, adds some subtlety into it. It's a little too green right through here. It's on, off, on, off. It could go either way. I'll stick with that. Let's see. The blues, do they add anything? I don't know. I'm going to commit to it. Part of being an artist is being able to make choices. Like if somebody wants to be a director of a film, they better be able to know when to say yes and when to say no and to commit to something and just go with it. And I think that that is a hard skill to learn because it sounds nice to be in control and then you have to make all the choices. That's a lot of choices. Do we do this or we do that? It's a hard place to be. Let's turn back on that line layer so I can see our little fishes and see where I need to add detail. I wonder how many people paint this way. I know there are lots of different ways of painting. So this is how I have learned to paint, and it works pretty well for me. I think it's a pretty fast method. It's a little sloppy. Doesn't always get clean lines everywhere. But what I like about this is that it gives me the bigger composition pretty quickly. I mean, we can, in just the short period of time we've been painting together, get through 80% of this illustration in a very short period of time. That's what I think I like the most about this. Has its own style though. If I wasn't working from line art, I would probably be discovering these shapes as I paint as well. This is a Sometimes I'm not sure exactly what the image is, and so I just sculpt it in as I go. Something else that was in the original painting was these beautiful kind of underwater swirls. Do I keep them and add them on top? They might add something to the whole composition again. I think they would. I think they would add something. So I'm going to make a new layer and brush on some different colors along here. Actually, I'm going to show a trick in Photoshop, and this is not, I don't know how much this is used in other software, but this is something I like to try, is I'm going to make a new adjustment layer. Oh, you know what? This is got all my programs in the way. I'm going to hide this guy for now, so I can focus in on the painting itself. So in Photoshop down here, I'm going to make a new adjustment layer, and I'm going to say curves. So what the curves will do is it's kind of hard to describe exactly what curves do. There should be another video on this, but these are the layers of dark and layers of light. And so if I make this curve, if I take the lighter and pull it up, all the things that are brighter are going to get brighter, or the brighter areas are going to get darker. And I can like pull up the darks, pull down the darks. You can pull up the lights or pull down the lights, and you can really mess up an image really quickly using this. But what I'm going to do is, you could do this on all three curves, or you can just say red, green, blue. So I'm going to go into the red and pull the red out. Maybe increase the blue, blue and green kind of on the high end a little here. And it makes this layer mask that then I can paint the whole thing, and just what it's going to do is it makes a black and white mask. So if I paint with white, anything that is white will have that effect applied to it. So now I can paint in these interesting lines of color that was in the original, these kind of swoops of underwater current difference in color and tone, and get that back into the painting. All right, I'm going to merge those two together. So original, the new version, kind of a different, it's a whole different feel to it. There's more details in the original. I could spend more time getting my details. I think I need to get some work on these fish underneath, and maybe some of the scales, and definitely get the characters' faces a bit more refined. But for this YouTube session, I won't go too much deeper on this, because otherwise it'll take hours, and I don't want this to be a multi-hour long video. Here it is without the lines. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom into the face a bit more, and now I can work on these details. This is definitely the process that I use all the time of start big, work smaller. I think I said it 4 times already, but just zoom in and work on those details. It's kind of like what I was doing farther out, but now just on a smaller scale, and I'll switch back and forth between blending and my brushes and just kind of work in the little details. I'll switch which brushes I'm using too. Sometimes for finer details, having a hard edge brush is a little bit nicer. And then I can blend some of those little details, the eyebrows, the eyelash. For the teeth, I'm just kind of desaturate that color a little bit, and it'll make it feel kind of gray. For the eyes, I think I will desaturate and make a little darker in here. Make some pupils and maybe add a little bit of glow on the eyes, and a little warmish colored kind of highlight from her dress. I need to do something with the nose because I'm not wanting to lean on this side would be more shaded because the light is coming from the right. Look at that without the line art. Still kind of smushy without that line art. I'm going to take the line art layer and put its opacity down just so I can see what's supposed to be under there, but I'm more focused on the actual paint layer. So my paint layer, I need this ear to kind of come back, I need this ear to come back. Need the hair to start having some details in here. Scribbles, lots and lots of scribbles. Scribbles clean up, keeps it fast. Actually, this side of the nose will have a little bit of that cool light on it. Cleanup. Lots and lots of little bits of cleanup. Zooming in, getting those details. I like to have a transition of color across the terminator edge. Local cleanup. I hope that music is just playing in the background with this, because I can imagine this is kind of boring to watch. For some reason my camera keeps stopping because I'm recording too long, and I hate to lose all this work. Clean up on the neck and blending these tones. This type of work isn't impossible to do, and it doesn't have to take forever, and it doesn't have to be all mystified and difficult. But hopefully you can see that this process is what takes the greatest amount of time on an illustration. Once we have the right colors Everything else is just cleanup. Lots and lots of cleanup. Hide the line layer, start seeing the shapes in the form of this. Getting used to blending and brushwork is something I think is a very personal pursuit. Getting used to the tool. It's like, how do you hold a pencil? So many people hold pencils different ways. Okay, the hair in the original is quite wavy. Let's see if we can get that wave back into this. Adding in some of those brighter tones again, just to make it very interesting of color variation. Let's see what those wavy hair again. Kind of being a little sloppy with the eyes here. It's not looking as pretty. Blech. Very conscious of the time here and don't want this video to start getting too long. She has kind of golden eyes. Maybe I'll make those gold again. Okay, and the last part, I think I need eyes of the fish. Details in the fishes. Well, I feel like I could spend 3 more days cleaning up, or maybe at least 3 hours. Let's have some water droplets floating up here, like she's magically lifting this out of the water. Make another. This is such a common trick of mine, but I like it, so I'm going to do it. And that is adding more. I'm going to go for those caustic effects on the fish. Make it look like light is coming from the surface and wrapping onto our little fishies. Okay, and the last thing that I want to do before I wrap this up and say that's enough for this painting is to try to make these fish under the water feel a little bit warmer. So I am going to attempt again, hit save. I'm going to attempt a curves again. I'm going to take the blue out a little bit and the green down just a little. Put the red up just slightly, and then this layer I'm going to paint in on top of the fish. So what this is doing is it's just kind of like leaning those colors ever so slightly orange. That'll give these fish just a little bit of a warm feel under the water. So they're still goldfish, but you don't see much gold in them. Does it look like, does that help a little? Maybe let's take the, just make this a little bit lighter here. So they're ever so slightly gold. Gold-ish. Just a hint of color under there. I don't know if that was a good idea or not, but it's something I try. Let's give this guy a little bit more gold up at the surface. Merge these two layers again, save. Original, okay. So here we go. I think I'm going to call this the end for now. I could spend more time putting details into this, but I think this is good enough. This beautiful image, and then here's my repaint of it. Just kind of a different look with a little bit more of a 3D feel to the light. This was a lot of fun. Maybe I'll do some more of these as time goes on. Oh, I didn't really get that one fish's eye well. You know what? Before I finish this, I need to get that one fish up at the top. Its eye needs some love. Sorry. I see it's a focal point of the whole image, so I need to fix it. This will be the last thing that I do on this. Is cleaning up this cute fish's eye. Okay. Endless, I tell you, endless. Remember when I said artist's work is never completed, only abandoned? This is that moment. There's just, I can't stop. There's always something more to fix. Always, always. Okay, I think one last little tweak here. Blending of some final details. All right, here's the final painting. I think I'm finally done. Let me put this into save, put this into display mode here. The final painting. I hope that this was informative to kind of see the research process in advance and the images that I looked at and the intentions that I wanted to put into this. And I sort of think I did okay at getting into this, what I wanted into it. I could keep noodling this forever, but I'm going to stop now. All right, so came down to the end and I thought I was done, but I walked away and I came back and I just had to make a couple more little tweaks to this. So I went from this version to this version. I added some magic in the sky and I didn't actually record that part, but there's the last little tiny bit of just cleaning up some of the edges and some of the lines just a little, and the swirl around the fish was done just with another add mode layer and just kind of painting in a little swirl. The cool thing was I sent that image to Nimali and Nimali replied and sent a new version of their painting, which I thought was just perfect. It's just beautiful. It took the reference of my colors and then their style and just added to it, and it's just beautiful. So here is the original version, here is my version, and here is Nimali's beautiful new version. This was a lot of fun. Thank you all for watching. I hope this was helpful, and I'll talk to you again soon. Keep creating.